people have an action report that you can see the video.
Welcome. We're here today with Stuart Lawler. Good morning, Stuart. How are you?
Hi, Stephen. Nice to be with you. Thank you.
And we're here in the NCBI Training Centre. Stuart, can you give people a brief outline of what you do here in the training centre?
Sure. So I'm the centre manager and I'm responsible for the coordination of our rehabilitative programme, which is called Learning for Life. It's a QQI certified programme, so QQI are Quality and Qualifications Ireland, who validate all programmes that sit in the National Framework of Qualifications. So I'm responsible for overseeing the delivery and the development of that training programme.
And have you got many students here, Stuart, at the moment?
So we currently have 28 students and a flexible 5-day week, which means that some people will come to our centre to get specific supports in a range of modules, including cookery, a whole range of technology modules, learning Braille, communications, literacy, and then I suppose there's more practical type modules like cookery, keep fit, swimming, yoga, and relaxation. So we try to cater for a broad range of needs.
So, Stuart, you've been blind all your life, is that correct?
Yeah, I'm totally blind. I've been blind since birth. My eye condition is something called retinoblastoma, which is quite rare, certainly in Ireland. It's also known as childhood cancer. So it is a cancerous tumour on the optic nerve, which, if it's not treated, the tumour will move from the back of the eye along the optic nerve to the brain. So in order to save your life, I suppose, they have to sever the optic nerve, obviously, which means a complete lack of sight.
And how has technology helped you in your life?
You know, I think technology is one of those things that is probably the greatest equaliser for people who are disabled. And I think if you're blind in particular, getting access to information, I would go so far as to say having a job. If you want to engage nowadays, you have to use technology. So something like using a PC, reading email. I can use my iPhone, which has assistive software actually built into the device, which is great. Braille terminals to allow you to read and write using Braille if you wish to do that. And for people who are low vision, the whole idea of magnification, not only to magnify electronic print, but actual paper-based print using a camera. So there's a lot of stuff out there.
Stuart, if you were to ask the government for any help, or you went to say to them, what would it be?
I think there probably needs to be more funding made available to not just increase services, I think, because we all want that, more availability to access services, but I think there needs to be a piece of work done to support people with disabilities to increase awareness around issues that will impact them. So, for example, cars parked on pavements, or a lack of audible announcements on public transport. I think that's where money needs to be invested into making sure that for everybody who uses public services, that they can do so with confidence.
And just one final question: the public transport. How do you find public transport now? The likes of trains, buses, have they become better equipped to deal with people with disabilities, and are they helpful at all?
I think there's no doubt that we're in a much better place than we were 10 years ago. And I think when you look at public transport and services around public transport and things like audible announcements, the people who bring these in and the people who make the decisions need to think of them as being of benefit to as broad a part of the population as possible. So it's not just visually impaired. There may be tourists, there may be people who have difficulty reading, who can't see a stop, who are not familiar with a route, who need to be able to hear where that stop is. I think in terms of customer service, there's greater awareness out there. Yes, it's probably harder because some of the transport companies have to cut staff, so there's not as many people around. But certainly, if you fly nowadays, probably the best example is airline travel, because there's all sorts of directives in place of the European Union that that will ensure that airline companies have to provide a certain level of service, and in most cases that works quite well.
Thank you very much, Stuart, for your time this morning.
Pleasure.
Thank you.